Hey everybody, Zach here, and welcome back to the Dino Rabbit Format YouTube channel. So today we're going to do one of the most overdone things ever, but fuck it, let's do it. Shout out to Heather from the Discord for the suggestion. We're doing a Dino Rabbit Format tier list. So, all the decks you see here I've compiled. To my knowledge, all have a minimum of regional tops, but I do want to address the Blaze Phoenix bubble and the Skill Drain bubble. This represents FTKs in general. So this represents Gallus FTK, Blaze Phoenix FTK, and any other random FTKs that I may have missed. And this represents any like Malefic stun, Beast stun kind of thing that like would main Skill Drain. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here are the categories. So we have Tier 1, which is the best of the best. The decks that will have the most representation in a tournament. Tier 2 are the decks that will have solid representation in a tournament that will have some top cut spots. Tier 3 are decks that will have okay representation with maybe a steal of a top cut spot. Rogue, not very popular, not likely to top, but still will from time to time. And then I put But Why for like decks that I still to this day don't know how they topped, but in this list I believe nothing makes this category. Alright, so we're going to do this in order, starting with Quick Draw Dandy. So Quick Draw Dandy, or just Junk Doppel, or just Quasar, it's a very fun combo deck. Unfortunately, it hard loses to Max C, though Quasar is an extremely powerful card that many decks will struggle to out. I think this deck is really fun. I think if you really like combo, it will be a deck for you. But this deck is, in my opinion, a rogue deck. So up next we have Chaos. So I am factoring in Chaos all as one deck. So this includes like the two main variants that had success, just the Chaos Control and then the Piper Chaos Control. So I mean, they're the same deck with fundamental differences, but they play pretty much the same. Trying to control the game using your Chaos monsters, make big pushes out of nowhere. And this deck, in my opinion, is Tier 3, because this deck is actually not bad, just a little bit worse than what you would see up here. Heroes. Heroes are amazing. Heroes do well in this format. Whether you're playing just regular Drain heroes, regular Gemini heroes, Bubble Beat, hell, even Big City is not bad in this format. Heroes are one of my favorite of the not big four in this format, and for that reason, I am putting Heroes as our first Tier 2 deck. Up next, we have Empty Jar. Empty Jar is a very degenerate deck out strategy that does exist in the format, being very good if you don't know how to play against it. But its biggest downside definitely is its own deck building. Flat out, the deck can just fizzle on itself. It does play cards like One Day Apiece and Gold Sark to get to that point of being able to protect itself. But I still think this deck will fall into the Rogue section. Up next we have Gadgets. There are two main variants of Gadgets that I saw have success in this format. You have Gadget Stun and then Machina Gadgets, which is just you play Gadgets but with Machina Fortress and Gear Frame, and then the Stun build, you just see the deck play like stuff like Thunder King, Fossil Dyna, you know, the stunny cards. And you know, decks always trap heavy anyway. Gadgets are really good, very consistent on their own. Unfortunately, they do just kind of struggle with the side deck. So that is why Gadgets, in my opinion, are going to be a rogue deck. So this is a deck that a lot of people will not recognize. Dark Lord Control is a really interesting deck. The only reason I decided to put it here is because Arc Lord Christia is one of the most annoying cards for decks to out. Flat out, Arc Lord Christia can just shut off so many decks. And that's essentially the goal of the deck, is just to turbo out Christia. But I didn't want to put a picture of Christia because I will also talk about agents over here. So this is a very fun deck, very aggressive at times. Once you can get Christia out, you can just play the slow game and just slowly kill them. And you are playing Valhalla, the Hall of the Fallen, so you can just special Christia from your hand, and you're playing 3 Hecatrice, so you can pitch it to add the Valhalla. It is just trying to get Christia out. I think this deck's really cool, and because of it being able to have positive matchups with some of the decks we'll see in the top 2 tiers, I'm going to put this in tier 3. Gravekeepers are a very, very, very fun deck. Tyler Tabman proved that this deck is very good. A lot of the decks this format are graveyard reliant, which in turn completely can 180 matchups in its favor so fast the moment a Necro Valley hits the board. Plus being able to main deck almost 16 trap cards is really good. And being able to just control the game. Gravekeeper's Spy is still an annoying card to get over for like Rabbit, because, oh, swing a Guaiba into it? Sure, take 300, or take 800, because you might have a Necro Valley up. So yeah, in my opinion, Gravekeepers are a tier 2 deck, because out of nowhere, they can just steal games. Alright, up next we have Exodia. So Exodia is a hindsight deck. And what do I mean by this? So this is a deck that didn't do anything until we got to Worlds. And it was played by Jarrell Winston to a top 8. But I'm looking at the Worlds list and the TCG list and then Jarrell's list on its own. And I think Exodia is not a bad deck. Being able to play triple Upstart, triple One Day, and Hope for Escape and all these really powerful draw cards is really good. I was just stunned by how good this deck has been in testing, too. Like, I thought nothing of it. I'm like, oh, he went to Worlds with something crazy, because why not? You know, you can't play Rabbit over there, because Rabbit and Dulka were TCG exclusives. Wind-ups were borderline unplayable, because if I'm not mistaken, Hunter was banned. Inzectors were the best deck by far. I believe the only limitation it had was Hornet to 1, I think, or something along those lines. It was like a really small hit. But in my opinion, Exodia, I'm going to put it tier 3, but it can also go Rogue. But if I'm putting it in Rogue, I'm putting it towards the top of Rogue. So I'm going to put it here for now. When we get to the end, and then I would put this above Empty Jar, but not above the Quasar decks. But yeah. Okay, so Final Countdown. This is a deck that is insanely strong. It was very underrepresented in the actual format until Nationals, where it surged in popularity. But unfortunately, people already knew about it, so due to siding, it didn't do well. But if you're not prepared for this deck, you are going to lose. It is a very tough deck to beat, because it tries to turbo to get to Final Countdown, and then it just stalls for 20 turns. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Remember, in this format, Final Countdown is at 3. And just being able to lock your opponent out of the game, in my opinion, makes this a tier 2 deck. Not better than Heroes, but I do think it's better than Gravekeepers. So, the next deck is going to be a deck that, you know, a lot of people will be like, well, that deck's unplayable. Striker's at 1. So we're going to talk about TG Rush Rhino control, or just TG control. It's essentially just playing the TG Rush Rhinos, the Werewolf, Striker, Cyber Magician, and just some beaters like Thunder King. You're just trying to be aggressive with the deck, but you can also make very fun synchro plays, like being able to make Nap Beast or Barkion, which is always nice. In the way the deck can be very aggressive, being able to search out multiple copies of Rush Rhino is always really good. Unfortunately, I think this deck does fall to the bottom of Rogue as of right now, as I don't see it being better than any of these 3. But I do like this deck, and a profile will be coming hopefully within the next couple weeks, as I've been testing a list for this deck, and I really like how it's playing. So next we have the Ape Fighter Beatdown strategy. So this strategy first came up in YCS Long Beach, where Wilson Sang got top 8 with it, with just smoke screening into wind-up hand loop after siding, because the deck was commonly called Floater Beat at that point, where it's playing Ape Fighter, wind-up Rabbit already in the main deck, because Horn of the Phantom Beast is a really dumb card. So this deck is really fun, and I think it's honestly pretty good. I've been testing it recently with a lot more Beast monsters, though, than what Wilson played, and cutting some of like the stuff that was clearly in there to assist with the wind-up portion of the deck. So I'm going to put this in between the Gadgets and the Empty Jar deck in the Rogue category. I think it's a very fun deck that I highly recommend you trying out. Anyway, on to the next deck. So here we have the first of the big four. Chaos Dragons, by far, can be the most crazy deck ever, solely because Future Fusion exists in this format. That card is bonkers, and I will die on that hill. Whether you agree with me or not, that card is stupid. That card is insane, and I really, really think that card objectively breaks the deck. Not saying Chaos Dragons wouldn't be good without it, because clearly it was, because in the next format it had solid representation. But Future Fusion puts it above a lot, and this will be the first Tier 1 deck, which I'm sure everyone saw this coming, but yeah. So, next we're going to talk about Lightsworn. I'm using JD to represent the two main Lightsworn decks that I personally know exist in this format, those being Twilight and then Flamvel Lightsworn. I personally like both the decks. I think Lightsworn is such a fun deck to play. Just the aggressiveness out of nowhere. Just surprise JDs. Heather, if you're watching this, surprise double JD BLS because what the hell? And all that kind of stuff. Lightsworn's fun. Its biggest problem is it can lose out of nowhere to, like, just random floodgates. Macro is really difficult for the deck to play around. But I do think because of the aggressiveness of Lightsworn, I am going to put it in Tier 3 above Dark Lord Turbo and Exodia, but not as good as Chaos. Even though you could technically call this a Chaos deck, because Twilight is essentially a Chaos deck, no comment, that's all I have to say, moving on. You can argue with me in the comments, I don't mind. So, up next we have Agents. So, again, like the TG deck, I'm sure someone's going to say, but Earth's at 1, the deck obviously sucks. Which, that's your right to believe. I think that's fine. Agents, again, are really good because Christia out of nowhere wins games. Also, Hyperion just being able to come back every, like, 2 seconds is really good. As well as Venus just being a good card. This is such a fun deck. I recommend you try it. But, unfortunately, it does fall in the Rogue category. On good days, though, it can be moved up here. So, I think I'm going to put it between the Beast deck and the Gadgets, but on a good day, you can argue it's here, here. But for now, we're going to put it here, and then I'll consider at the end. Alright, so up next we have Dino Rabbit. This is, in my opinion, the best deck in the format. Arguments can be made that Inzectors or Windups can be better. Sure, that's fine. Dino Rabbit is just so good because you can play hand traps, you can play macrocosmos, you can play so many things. There's not many cards that just default make Rabbit pointless. And that is why I still think the deck is by far the best deck. Just because it doesn't really care about, you know, its own macro. It can play Floodgates. Big Dinosaur boss monster equals win. And that kind of stuff. So now we're going to have Rabbit up in the Tier 1 category. And now we're going to talk about that other dinosaur deck that exists in this format. This is Evols. So Evols are a really cool deck. This is the deck that Dolka and Logia were made for. By the way, Evol deck profile going up hopefully this week. I don't know if you're seeing this video or that one first. We'll just play the waiting game and we'll soon find out. Am I right? Anyway, so this deck is a interesting deck. My biggest problem with Evols is they can go off, but one of your best cards is a flip monster, and it's really sad. Because Evil Tile Westlow is a flip that lets you add any of your Evilsaur cards from your deck to your hand. Which, you know, it's still a good deck. I think it's fun, but I am going to have to put it in the bottom of Rogue as of now. Not bad enough to be a but why. But now that I'm looking more at the list, I think there are going to be no but whys in this. Next, we're going to take a look at 6am. I mean, all I really have to say is read Gateway and then read Shien. Those two cards are still just insane. I personally really like how Shien plays. I think 6ams are good. They get the structured X support, which gives them the rank 4. This deck goes on to win Central American Nationals. In my opinion, this is definitely a Tier 3 deck. I'm going to put it above the Exodia deck, but not as good as the Dark Lord or the Blightsworn variants, but a very good deck nonetheless. Inzectors. This deck can just go off. This is one of my favorite decks to play against windups because, oh, loop my Hornet, normal Dragonfly, and if they don't have something, they just get really sad. Because again, Hornet's a really dumb card. That's all I have to say. I'm going to put Inzectors here above Chaos Dragon in my opinion. Next, we're going to talk about Ninjas. Ninjas came out in Order of Chaos. On paper, they should be really good. In practice, they are not. The biggest problem with Ninjas is they don't have a clear goal. There are a couple of variants you can play, which, in my opinion, the two big ones are Dino Ninjas, which is basically you are playing ninjas, but you are focusing on ninjutsu art of super transformation to get out Guaibas and White Dragon Magician. Or you're playing Bird Ninjas, which is really just to turbo into a Mist Valley Apex Avian or a Dark Samorg using just the original old ninjutsu art of transformation, which in my opinion is the better variant just because it's more consistent. But the not having a consistent 100% game plan is what in my opinion makes ninjas really struggle. And I am going to put them above Evols, but not above any of these other rogue decks. Alright, next we have Karakuri. This is one of my, favorite sleeper decks that not a lot of people really give credit for. I like how this deck plays, mainly because I was just a big component for it in the format before this, known as Tengu Plant format. I really like Karakuri, that format. It's a machine deck that focuses around synchro summoning two really big monsters known as Karakuri Beret and Karakuri Beredo. They have longer names than that. I just don't remember exactly what they're called. They're like Shogun model something. Beret and then Beredo. But I do think this deck is very strong. But now that I'm thinking about it, this might actually turn into the first but why deck, followed by Karakuri. Because, to my knowledge, I don't know how these decks actually succeeded without opening completely bonkers every game the more that I'm looking at it. I should have probably turned this into Rogue and into this to Casual. You know what? We're gonna do that right now. Casual. Instead of but why. And then, we're gonna move this here too. By the way, I'm not disproving that these decks can do things. I'm just looking at it with more hindsight now that we have a majority of the decks we already have on this list in here. But that is just my opinion. Next we have Hieratics. Hieratics were the big hype deck from Galactic Overlord. Unfortunately, they kind of flopped as a deck, but they are still pretty good. Being able to just OTK out of nowhere, resolve 3 red MD in one turn is just, you can never scoff at it. So we're going to put this at the top of tier 3 for now, but if you argue for tier 2, I would agree with you without hesitation. Next we have Party Boat. Windups, Hand Loop, Windups combo for days. They can OTK out of nowhere. What more do I need to say? Come on, friend. We're going to put you right here. And this will close off tier 1, by the way. Your tier 1 decks are Rabbit, Windup, Inzector, Chaos Dragons. Feel free to decide what order you want them to go in. I try to do these tier lists in the order of which I think is the best of all of them, etc., etc. So next we have Zombies. Zombies are really fun. The biggest problem is Mizuki's at 1 in this format. I want them to, be a very good deck. I do think they're a fun deck, but they are going to fall to the casual status, in my opinion. Now, the more I look at it, I do think the deck has potential. Synchros out the wazoo. But I still think the deck is good. I mean, hey, all these decks have at least regional tops. Which, those could just be lies, because doing research on March 2012 format, Pojo and random posts online is really difficult, but, whatever. Next we have Monarchs. There are 3-ish variants of Monarchs that run around in this format. There are just pure Monarchs with just a minimum frog engine, some battle faders, and some stuff like that. Then you have Sea Lancer Frogs, which is just frogs, Frog Monarch with less monarchs and more Sea Lancers. Sea Lancer is a card that lets you equip your banished frogs from your bin to itself. Then it gains attack. You can, instead of destroying it, you can send one of them to the graveyard, which in this case will actually get like cards like Poison Draw Frog and Dupe Frog to actually resolve. Monarchs, in my opinion, are one of the top of the casual category. That is just me. So next we have Chainburn. Chainburn has a YCS top in this format. No, I still can't put my hand on how, but it does. It's good. It's unfortunate, but if you play the deck right, you are going to win a lot of games. Again, it's another deck that if you don't know how to play against it, you are going to probably lose. This deck is a lot of fun. I'm going to put it at the bottom of Tier 3, though, because I don't think it's better than any of these decks, but I think on a good day, it can be better than these. Alright, next we have the Grapha the deck. Grapha is one of my favorite cards in this format. I think Grapha just steals games out of nowhere because of the recursion. Being able to use cards like Drag Down into the Grave to look at your opponent's hand and combo them with Mind Crush. Ooh, Chef's Kiss. Hand advantage is so good in that deck. Also, you know, and like I said, recurring boss monsters are dumb. Being able to play all the good draw cards is also really nice. Dark Worlds are a nice Tier 2. I feel like these two are mismatchable, but I feel Heroes and Final Countdown are better than Gravekeepers and Dark Worlds. The only deck that I would consider moving up to Tier 2 from here is the Hieratic deck. Next we have Disaster Dragon. This deck, according to what I've read and watched in videos, the deck has a couple of regional tops. And Disaster Dragon, for the people who may not know what that deck is, it was a deck that is very popular in the very, very, very popular Edison format, featuring cards like Prime Material Dragon, Light and Darkness Dragon, and other cards like Mass Dragon, Totem Dragon, to occur advantage, to keep recurring your dragons and just win the game that way. Deck is very fun, really good at times, but again, it is a casual deck. I think it's still worse than Zombies. But the deck in this format isn't bad. I've tested it around. It can steal games. Just being able to Dragon Wii is always good. But yeah. So up next, we have Watts. Watts have a Nationals top. Watts are a very interesting control deck that bases around the ability of cards like Watt Cobra, Watt Pheasant, and Watt Giraffe's ability to attack directly, and then using cards like Watt Hopper and Watt Dragonfly to create the Watt Lock, and just win the game by just telling your opponent no. Do I think this deck is insanely good? No. Do I think it's a very fun but decent deck? Yeah. So I'm actually going to put Watts at the top of the casual deck portion of this. Next we have Gladiator Beasts. Gladiator Beasts, I profiled them last week. You guys know they could be really good. They're very aggressive, but they can win games out of nowhere. Do I think they're like this insane like meta defier? No, but I am going to put them in the rogue category. Because I do occasionally know from just deck profiles, from YCS lists, that they're like, oh yeah, I just played Glad Beast like round 3 for some reason and stuff. So obviously Glad Beasts are a fan favorite, so I'm going to put them in the rogue category. Infernity. Man, I wish this deck was better. Because I'm a huge fan of 2014 Xyz Go Wii Infernity. And I truly think that this deck could be good this format. It's just we're past the point where Synchro Infernity is this insanely threatening thing like it was during Nationals 2011. So we're going to put this deck in the rogue category just because of the combo potential. Next, we're going to talk about Blaze Phoenix FTK, Gallus FTK, and any of the other miscellaneous FTKs. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm just throwing them in casual. The FTKs in this format are interesting. The biggest problem is they're all inconsistent and kind of lose to themselves a lot of the time. I've tried to break them just to put it out there that they exist. But if they work great, but if not, they're not good. And then skill drain decks. This is like Malefics, weird, yeah, just like Malefic Stun and all these different like skill drain beatdown kind of things. This is also a deck I'm going to put a casual, but I'm going to put around here because skill drain is a bonkers card. So yeah, so this is going to be where the tier list video ends. This is not the end all be all. I think I want to update these every few months. The more I play, the more I can talk. We can add more decks to the next one. I hope to the sooner we get our community bigger, we can start doing events. They'll be small, but it would give us, you know, like kind of like a meta to like work with that isn't just the meta that happened then and our, you know, casual play with the group. Like I said in the beginning of the video, we do have a Discord server. Please check it out in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you did enjoy. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.